Hey guys, it's Lindsay. I am back today with my 6 week postpartum update and baby update. Just to say a few words about how baby Georgia is doing. She is borderline about to eat. So I've got her just beyond here, which is why you also notice different background. It's basically the opposite of where I usually sit at the other side of the table. So more of the kitchen view today. So we'll see how far I get if I'm able to film this whole thing before she starts to cry and is ready to eat. She's like awake, but kind of lounging, I would say. So 6 weeks have gone by already. So, well, to say a few words about the very beginning. So the first 2, 3 weeks were crazy. Like, we're very exhausted. If you look at any pictures of us in those first couple weeks, which maybe I'll insert here. You can see we look very exhausted. So, um, you know, every 2 hours, 2, 3 hours in the night, waking up, and baby doesn't sleep very well. And of course, especially in the hospital, right? Like, she was constantly waking up. Like, I don't really remember specifically like how often, but it just seemed to me because I wasn't always looking at my watch either, right? I was like lying in the hospital bed with her, and so whenever she woke up, like I would feed her or she would be crying, and like all night long, it basically seemed to be without any kind of like regularity, especially in those first few days. And it was like a whirlwind and kind of trying, especially in those first couple weeks, really trying to nap as often as possible. My husband had taken off 2 weeks to help me out, and it was like a significant help. And so we would try to nap whenever Georgia napped, and yeah, I kind of get used to everything. In that period, we did have to go back to like the hospital. And I'll try to keep like this update as mine separate kind of from later on when I'll talk about Georgia a bit. But we had to go back to the hospital for one of her checkups on, I think, the no, I don't think it will. The Tuesday for sure, because I had gotten released. No, the Wednesday. I got released on the Monday because I'd gone in for the C-section on the Thursday, and I was there till Monday, and um, they wanted us back 2 days later to double check on um, how she was doing, her weight, her weight more than anything else, because she had gone down a bit. And so, while I'll get into that more in a moment, that day I had to ask about myself too, because, or I think it was at the Thursday checkup, because that week we ended up having to go back Wednesday, Thursday, Friday because she was losing weight. Uh, but I ended up getting like cracked nipples at that point. But like, I mean, I was breastfeeding her, and like I would have like literal blood coming out. Like I would look and like I would see blood, not milk. And I was like, oh my God, that's like, I'm feeding her blood basically. Like that's not, that's not good. So we were giving her formula because we'd brought a bit home, because my brother-in-law had said, just in case, like have some formula on hand. And so I was giving her that in that moment because like I couldn't I couldn't feed her. So I was breastfeeding. Um, my breastfeeding journey was very short, but basically we went into the hospital and I asked for help about that, and they kind of gave me some advice, and I got some nipple cream, which like was, I feel like originally I hadn't bought nipple cream because I had read and heard that you could just use like your milk and it's lubricating, which yeah, it is, but like, I mean, the nipple cream helped significantly more, I have to say. And also, like, even the nurses at our hospital have been like, oh, don't, bother buying a pump because you don't know if you'll need it. I mean, I suppose in retrospect, I am glad that I didn't buy one. I borrowed from a friend because I only used it for like 3, 4, I guess 4 weeks. So that would have been a waste of money. Uh, but initially, I had seen that when I got out of the hospital that I needed it, and this was more on like Georgia's side of the update, but basically I needed to pump milk just to see also like kind of how much you're getting, but just to kind of keep up supply, understand like how much milk I had, because it turned out that I did not have enough milk, and that was why the hospital had pulled that out the last night that I was there, because uh, Georgia was crying like all night long. Basically that night I spent almost completely without sleeping. I think that I slept like for 2 hours or something, like midnight to 2 or something, and then I was up for the rest of the night or 3. It's kind of all foggy because I was finding too that the mom brain is really kicked in, but especially in those first like couple weeks after she was born, like holy cow, I couldn't remember anything. Even now I'll be like, I'll think about like the previous night or something, and I'll be like, and she ate at this time or she slept at this time, and I'm like, oh no, wait, is that right? Like I can't even like remember things in the same day. Like it's insane because I'm someone who typically has always had like a really good memory, and like where people will be like, how the heck do you remember that? And like now I can barely remember what even happened like last night. uh and like also my apps now, I've downloaded like the pregnancy plus kind of sister app, baby plus, right? And thank God I have that because it helps me remember, like, and I'm really bad about inserting when she sleeps. I try to remember, but it's pretty inconsistent. Sorry if you notice, like, I had to stop it for a moment because my mother-in-law popped upstairs because she brought a cabbage for me from the garden. Anyway, where was I? I believe, yes, that I had cracked nipples, and oh, that I used the pump because I seemed to have a low milk supply. It seemed that night. We thought because she was very hungry, crying the last night in the hospital. Anyway, so we had to go back. So I asked about the nipples. They gave me like a sheet of things to do, like wash with neutral soap and things. Okay. And so I, in the meantime, decided to not breastfeed on that side because it was like, it started out on the right side, but then ended up being on the left side too, bloody. So I was just trying to pump. And so already I had to kind of give her more formula. And anyway, then what happened was once that was resolved, by the time baby Georgia was 17 days old, I got mastitis. And I woke up, it was on a Sunday, but like on the Saturday, the night prior, I woke up at like 3 in the morning to feed her. And I was like, gosh, I feel achy. That's really weird. And my husband and I honestly thought that it was because, like we weren't sleeping, we were exhausted, kind of like the weird hours of getting up in the night. We weren't like really, used to it yet. And so I fed her and went back to bed. I woke up in the morning and I was like, gosh, I really do feel achy. I took my temperature and I had like, I think 38.5 degrees Celsius of fever. And I was like, oh, okay, that's why I feel crappy. And then I looked in and like my right boob again, which was the first one that I had issues with, also with the like cracks, was really sore. Also during the night, but I hadn't had mastitis before, so like I didn't really know. Went and looked in the mirror and it was all pink underneath, like reddy pink, right? And I called the hospital and they told me take like 1,000 milligrams of tacopurina, which in Italy is basically this, it's like acetaminophen basically, to take down your fever. And so I did that, and they said, see how you feel. If it goes away, then okay, good. But if not, come to the hospital. But because of COVID, you have to not go in like straight up through the front doors to the maternity ward, but go in through emergency. And so I was crappy all day. I took the tacopurina, but it honestly didn't really do anything, because after the time, I don't know, the 4 hours, when it wore off, my fever came back up. And in fact, it went up to like 39.3. And at that point, my husband, I think it was like near the evening at this point, he was like, okay, we need to like go to the hospital. So I called and let them know that I was coming. Went down there, left Georgia with my mother-in-law. So we went down, and actually we were kind of stuck for like a few minutes in the ER, because they had like those electronic scanners for the temperature, but they don't work very well, which we knew before. But like, she said, oh, why are you here? Okay, let's measure your temperature. And she was like, oh, but you don't have a fever. You have 36 degrees Celsius. And so like, my husband and I were like, yes, I do have a fever. Like, I know what it feels like to have a fever. Like, I feel crappy. And um, she was like, oh, but it says that you're like, you have 36 degrees. You don't have a fever. I'm like, my husband's like, listen, do you have like a normal thermometer? Like, can you give it to her? Because like, we just measured her temperature when we left the house with like one of the mercury thermometers. And so she's like, okay, yes, here. And after, I don't know, was it even 5 minutes? She looks and it was 39. And she was like, oh my God. And she calls out to her supervisor, this thing measured like 3 degrees difference. Like, it said she didn't have a fever at all. And she's got like 39-degree fever. And her supervisor was like, chuck out that piece of crap. Anyway, so they let me go up, but like, it was a bit of a problem before. They're like, oh yeah, like, so you've got a fever, hey? Like, I'm like, yeah, but it's because I've got like mastitis. And like, oh, okay, yeah, and I know mastitis has like a fever attached anyway. Boy. And so we went up, and they put me on antibiotics and gave me just a few prescriptions, like for the probiotics too, and to take ibuprofen every 4 hours or whatever. Anyway, for the pain. So basically, they told me at the hospital I could continue breastfeeding, but I decided not to, because my mother-in-law, who actually is a retired nurse, she was saying like, it goes into like your breast milk, and then like the baby becomes like irritated, right? Like upset, kind of like not like unsettled basically. And so I was like, oh geez, like, I don't really want her to be like unsettled. And then my husband wasn't really super keen either on, because he was reading all the medicines I had to take, and they were all like, this medicine goes into your breast milk, like, consult the doctor before you breastfeed while taking it. And anyway, like, talking also with like my grandma, and she was like, oh, I'm so surprised, like, they told you that you can breastfeed. Like, once upon a time they said not to. And like, my mother-in-law had said the same thing. And anyway, I decided not to. So I was pumping in the end. But in the meantime, that was like probably the worst thing for my breastfeeding journey, because my daughter got very used to having a bottle. And basically, after the mastitis, I basically stopped breastfeeding. So my journey lasted like 3 weeks, which was nothing like I planned at all. What can you do? Basically, I think, just to kind of mention a bit now, in the end, there was like, okay, I had, yes, the cracked nipples and the mastitis, but also my daughter she never latched very well, which I was like, well, I can go get that fixed. I can go to like the pharmacy because they have like consulting people there that can help you. But the thing is that through all the different times, even in the hospital though, like she didn't, especially once she had tasted like the sense of, wow, it's so easy to drink from a bottle. She really, really didn't want to drink from breast milk anymore. Like she would cry there sometimes. Like I was only able to feed her if she was like really calm, because if like but the thing is that they teach you at the hospital that like crying is one of the late signs of hunger, but like she will wake up from a nap and most of the time instantly cry. Like she's getting better now, but in the beginning, where she does it less now, but like in the very first few weeks, like literally she would wake up and instantly be crying, and it's like, how do you intervene before? And she wouldn't latch, and then and it was just like, I felt like, you know what, like I have a low supply, I don't have enough milk, which I'll get into later when I talk a bit more about her. But and she doesn't even want to nurse. Like I'm like, you know what, whatever, like I'm just gonna go bottle feeding in the end. So that's what we're doing now. And so I've already been doing that for, I guess, 3 weeks by now. It's good. I have no problems with it at all. I was a bit disappointed in the beginning. Still now I'm kind of like, you know, I feel kind of like, I don't know, I have this sensation that like, which is probably like not true, but like that people, because like it's so popular right now to breastfeed, that I feel like people would be like, judge you if you don't. But like, I know that fed is best, and this was my decision to do that because it wasn't working breastfeeding. So anyway, that was basically my struggle of breastfeeding and very quick journey. And now recently, in the last couple of weeks, the only kind of new thing is she's gone onto some kind of a schedule that we can kind of more or less understand in the night, which has helped also for getting used to waking up during the night. And we are like, in the first few weeks, we're definitely like around 5.5 hours of sleep a night. Now it's somewhere more around 6 to 7 on average, I would say. And she's pretty good too. Like on the weekend, like she'll also sleep till like 9. Like we'll wake up at like, I don't know, it changes every time, but let's say 6, somewhere between 6, 7, and go back to bed after, and she will sleep with us back till that point too. So on the weekend, we're able to get a bit more sleep, which is really helpful as well. So feeling better with that. In fact, I haven't really had naps in the day. Today I did, because I just felt like the last couple of weeks my anxiety's come back, which is something that like I struggled with it a lot like in the past. For sure, there was 1 year like where I struggled with it a lot when I was like 24 years old, and then 25, and then it kind of got better, and now it's kind of like seasonal a lot of the time. Like I'll get it when it's like changing from like winter to spring, or like summer to fall, which is kind of weird, but like I've noticed that because my husband has that too. So it's been a couple weeks now where I've had like anxiety come back, and I guess it's probably due to like, I don't know, the life change, I would have to assume, because my husband says probably, and like trying to always be there, like when she's crying, and like sometimes you're like on the toilet and she's crying, you're like, hey, I'll be right there, 1 second, and you know, because I don't want to leave her crying for long. Anyway, and I know that's like a first time mom thing too, because like once people are like second time moms, they're like, oh, I'll let them cry there for like a couple minutes. Whereas like the first time moms always like have to be there immediately. And anyway, so I'm always trying to like rush over and like calm her like as soon as I can. But I don't know, like I I wasn't able to have like a second coffee today because like I just had this anxiety that like I drank a bunch of like calming tea and like it still wouldn't go away. And so I napped actually with her on the couch. And yeah, the last thing about me is just I've been trying to walk as often as possible. Now, last Tuesday, I did have the 6 week checkup, so I'm cleared for like the whole recovery. So awesome. And yet, I have not been able to start I have like a postnatal sequence on my yoga DVD, but it's like hard to figure out when the heck to do that kind of exercise with a newborn. So what I've been doing is just walking around my town as often as possible, really my neighborhood, because I have like a lot of nice like paths along the neighborhood and a little park to walk along and stuff. So I kind of go out for like 50 minutes and that's me basically. So I'm doing well aside from like the anxiety thing, and it was like pretty difficult in the beginning there, and then now we've kind of started to get into a rhythm more, I would say, probably from week 4 on, kind of figuring out everything. And now I'll just kind of say about a few things about how Georgia's doing that I kind of half touched on like before. So basically, when we go back to when we were still in the hospital, uh, they were weighing, of course, her every day. And initially, they were not concerned because all babies lose a little bit after birth, right? But then I guess she was losing more weight. And so when we had gone back to the appointment on 2 days after we were released from the hospital, they'd said like, oh, well, actually this day was kind of weird because like the pediatrician at the hospital, we had said that that night that we were released from the hospital, Georgia cried like absolutely desperately, and like my mother-in-law was up helping us because like we were like really feeling desperate ourselves too, because she was absolutely crying, and I was like breastfeeding only at that point. We thought, okay, maybe she's like hungry, maybe she's not getting enough breast milk, because like I would be feeding her for like an hour and 40 minutes, and then like 20 minutes later she was like crying like as if she was really hungry again, or half an hour later, like it wasn't very long, and then feed her again for like, I don't know, an hour, and we're like, okay, something's not like working here. And so we gave her formula and she drank like 160 milliliters. And we were like, oh my God, the poor thing was like starving. And so we felt really, really awful, right? Like, because that's the thing with breastfeeding too. Like, you don't know, like, you have to like kind of hope that they're getting enough until you can like actually see them like, pudge up a bit, but like you're not going to see that on a day-to-day basis. And so we told the doctor that, and like he got angry at us and was like, oh, you were mistaken, like you should have only been breastfeeding. And we're like, okay. And so we went home that day saying like, okay, well, let's not give her any formula then, like let's just exclusively breastfeed. And they had us come back. They said we had to come back the next day because she'd lost more weight, I think. And so we did that. My mother-in-law was actually really pissed off that day. She's like, I don't understand, like, why you're not giving her like formula, like if she needs it. And we're like, well, let us like listen to what the doctor said. And she was like, that doctor, like, don't listen to him. And anyway, next day we go to the hospital. And they're like, okay, your daughter has lost like 10% of her body weight. She like, this is, don't worry, but like we need to act like now, like you must give her formula every time after you breastfeed. So they put me on like a schedule. They're like, you have to like breastfeed, and then you have to pump, and then you have to give her that milk you pumped the next time, and like alternate whether after you've feed your nurse to give her your pumped milk or your formula, and like always give 60 milliliters of formula after your breast milk. And I was like, okay, thank you. But like I said, we got in trouble yesterday from the pediatrician because we were giving her formula, and they're like, oh no, but we're not against like breastfeeding. I guess like the pediatrician was against breastfeeding. I don't know. Anyway, and actually some of like because my mother-in-law used to work at that hospital, and she talked to, later on in the week, one of the nurses there. And one of the nurses was like, oh, that pediatrician, like, so she was like, probably they don't all agree on that aspect at the hospital. But she was like, no, the nurse told me, she's like, no, you have to give her formula. So that was scary. We were like very upset, that week, because I was like, she was sleeping so much that like, and we didn't know in the beginning that it was because she was like finished, man. Like she didn't have enough food, and like my mother-in-law, like, oh, she's like a little angel, like always sleeping. You'd never know that the baby was in the house, but like, oh my God, but it was because she wasn't eating enough. And so that was really upsetting, and that was challenging. And we went back every single day that week. The Wednesday, Thursday, the Friday, finally, she started to put on weight because we gave her, the formula addition. And there she is. And so then they said, okay, now you're fine. You don't have to come back. But it was upsetting. And that was kind of the thing that started already getting Giorgia onto preferring the bottle, because wow, you can drink so much easier from the bottle. And then, as you know, I had like the other issues. So okay, once we sorted out that, and I put her on the bottle in the end, my milk just kind of decreased through the time when I had mastitis. Even when I was like pumping, like it would just go down, because like I have the baby wrap, and so I wear her, but like it was a problem for me also to find a moment to actually pump, because she would want to be on me all the time, and then I'd be like, oh my God, but I have to pump. And like I couldn't put her down, and then sometimes it would be, and so I was very irregular with pumping too. Like it would be at night, or then I wouldn't be able to until like 2 p.m. the next day, and I wouldn't be able to till maybe that evening, and then maybe 11 in the morning. But like it was just insane. And so that did not help my supply, and I let it just go, because it just wasn't worth it, seeing as that she preferred the bottle anyway. And like sometimes I would put her on the cushion because I would be trying to pump. I'll say, okay, I have to pump, she's asleep. And then she'd wake up like 5 minutes into pumping, and I'm like, oh my God. And so I would put her on the cushion and like be holding her while I'm pumping, and it was like a mess. Anyway, so that was challenging. And then at 3 weeks roughly, because 4 weeks, I think, she started to get colic. And so when we went for our first pediatrician appointment for the 1 month, which was just a couple days shy of a month, that had began. And so we've been giving her like drops for colic, and we've had some really rough nights. Every evening, kind of somewhere between 7:30 and 9, it starts and continues. And a lot of the time, the issues that I've been having, like uploading, is because that's the time we're in the evening where like, there's the moment to edit, because my husband's home, he can watch her, and I don't have that time because she's screaming until midnight, or if it's a really bad night, 12:40 in the morning. And anyway, that has been a challenge, and it was still most nights that is going on. We had, strangely, Saturday and Sunday, she did not have colic. I don't know. That must have been a fluke, because last night she certainly had it. And on Sunday morning, though, at 4 in the morning, she had like a crying stretch there for like 40 minutes, because I think she didn't want to go back to bed after she ate. And sleeping habits, last thing I want to talk about. she sleeps in the day in this like lounge chair that we've got her in, and in the very first couple of weeks, she would sleep in the bassinet. And then she started to hate the bassinet because I think she got bored of like looking at the ceiling, honestly, which I can understand. And so she sleeps during the day in this little lounge chair, like one of those baby lounge chairs. That's where she is now. And she sleeps well there. If you try to stick her in the bassinet, like I did this morning, she seems to be very out in the koala carrier wrap, which is what I use. I put her down in the bassinet because I was like, oh, I need to get dressed. Here, I'll put her down while I make the bed. Oh, 30 seconds, and she was awake and crying. She hates the bassinet. And so the only way that she'll sleep in there is maybe if she's like really dozy at night. Otherwise, forget it. She has to sleep in my arms. So what I've got is the pregnancy pillow that I haven't been able to put away because I put it around me. She lies in the crook of my elbow base, well, shoulder, I suppose, like this. And we sleep like that. And I just watch and I hold the blankets with my arm to make sure that it's like safe, because that was never something that I actually wanted to get into, was the co-sleeping thing. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened. So breastfeeding was unexpected, and so was this. But it's the only way she'll sleep. Like, I mean, my brother-in-law has also said, like, you just wait. Like, if you're sleep deprived, you're gonna pull that kid in your bed, because at a certain point, like, you just gonna need to sleep. And it's true. It's true. The important thing is that we don't continue that for very long, because I don't want to continue that for long, because then I think then you start to like really get a habit. But if she's awake, there's no way, like, she will not sleep in her bassinet. And yeah, so she'll only sleep in it if we've gone on a walk and she happens to be asleep anyway in it, or at night if she's just totally out. The last 2 nights she actually did sleep in her bassinet. Last night, and see, this is one of those things like mom brain. I'm like, was it last night that she slept the whole night in the bassinet, or was it the night before? Because I feel like one of the nights I pulled her out halfway through. I think it was yesterday, like at 4 in the morning or something. I think she did sleep all the way through. Anyway, um, it's very hit or miss, but that's basically how she does sleep. I mean, it's not like the issue, because in the very beginning, like, I would be after up till 1 in the morning past, then like up with her trying to like rock her to sleep, and she would be crying, and then it would take a couple hours to put her back down. So to be honest, she sleeps well, like she does. She really hasn't got very many sleeping issues. Like, she does sleep. It's just that she has to be in the right kind of state to sleep in the bassinet, and then she's often in the koala carrier all day with me, because sometimes if she's fussy, like, I'll try and put her in the lounge chair, but if she's not having it, then out in the koala carrier she goes, and she's happy as a clam in there, falls asleep, super cozy. It's like the best thing ever. I could not live without one of those wraps. It's like, because it allows me to get stuff done around the house too, like, even, and the only issue is like on a morning like today where she was fussy. It's like one of those mornings where, like, often I'll be like, okay, I bring her in on the lounge to the bathroom and like have to rock her. Today I didn't have to rock her because she was like settled enough that I didn't have to, but like rocking her with one foot while I'm like washing my face, going like, okay, just a couple minutes, let me get dressed, and then I'll put you in the koala carrier. Anyway, that's basically how things have been going the first 6 weeks for me and baby Giorgia. So thank you for watching this update. Press like if you enjoyed this update, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, with your bell notifications turned on. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Bye! Hey, sorry for this really long update, but I realized I forgot to put Giorgia in at the end. This is like an hour later. Anyway, she just finished eating, and here she is. There we go. Anyway, bye.